I'm your host, Barry Meikle, and today's bite-sized topic is on auditor competency. I'm delighted to be joined by Emmanouela Marini, who is part of our integrity team here at BRCGS. Hi, Emmanouela, and welcome.
Hi, Barry. Thank you for the invite to join the bite-sized series.
You're very welcome. Thank you for agreeing to come on. So we talked. I introduced the topic briefly at the start about auditor competency. So just going at it from a kind of consumer angle, first of all, why do BRCGS auditors actually matter? What is their role in terms of the consumer?
So most people never actually meet an auditor, but the auditor works really affects what we all buy, especially when it comes to food and other everyday products. So auditors are part of the system that helps make sure products are safe and legal and meet the expected standards. So from a consumer's perspective, when you pick something up in a supermarket, there's a whole process behind the scenes that's helping build the trust in that product, and auditors are part of that. So it's not always visible, but it's really important. It plays a really important role in protecting consumers.
Right. So there are some misconceptions about auditors. What would you say to that?
Yes, there is the most common misconception is that auditors are there to catch people out, but in reality, their role is to assess things objectively and consistently. And it's not about assigning the blame, it's about identifying risks and making sure the requirements are met. And another misconception is that it's just paperwork, but in practice, auditing really requires a lot of judgment and real world understanding.
Mm. So you talked about auditors not wanting to catch people out, and it's about understanding what the site is doing. So on that, then, what makes a good auditor? What kind of attributes would they have? Would they typically have or need?
So it would require hard skills. It's not just ticking boxes. They need to be able to interpret the risk in a real operational context. It starts with very good technical knowledge, strong technical knowledge and experience. But what really makes the difference is how this is applied in practice. They do require one really key skill is professional skepticism, not just accepting things at face value, but questioning whether they make sense and if they are supported by evidence. And at the same time, they need to be pragmatic and understanding how things actually work in practice so they can apply their requirements in a very realistic way. Attention to detail is very critical because very small issues can often lead to much bigger underlying problems. Very key aspect is integrity and independence. They're both essential. Being able to stay objective and making fair decisions, even when that's not straightforward. And communication is also very important, and being able to explain things clearly and in a very constructive way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with all of those. I think communication is one of the key skills that a good auditor should have, being able to communicate effectively with all levels of the operation, all different staffing levels from managers right down to the staff right on the line. So I think that's a really important skill for them to have. So so we talked about a little bit in terms of their personality skills or their sort of hard skills, as you said. In terms of other skills, what qualifications do auditors need to be able to audit against our standards?
So it's a combination of education, training, and experience. So to start with, the core requirements include 5 years of relevant industry experience in roles involving risk and decision making. Consultancy experience can also be considered, but it must be clearly demonstrable that the responsibilities are at the same level and the exposure is equivalent in terms of time and depth.
Yeah.
And candidates also need training in hazard risk assessment and completion of the relevant BRCGS scheme training. And audit training is key, but these can vary on each individual because they're often developed in collaboration with a certification body, and it's tailored to each individual's existing experience. There is an expectation of having completed 10 audits in the last 2 years, but this is a work in progress in collaboration. And one piece of advice I'd give to everyone is approach the application in the same way that you would approach an audit. Make sure that everything is really clear and structured and based on evidence, and it needs to be very specific on experience. And strong, well-presented evidence really makes a difference to auditors being qualified.
Right. So if there's anybody out there who might be interested in becoming a BRCGS auditor, what would you advise them, and how could they get that process started?
So the process normally starts through a certification body who collates all the qualifications and the evidence, and then that gets submitted into our directory. And after it's been reviewed already by the certification body, and then it goes through the final approval, second verification check from us in order to go through. So I would say as a first step is making sure that they have all the qualifications in hand and approaching a certification body to make the plan.
So it's a requirement of BRCGS that these auditors are employed by a certification body that's been approved by us, right?
Yes, yeah. All auditors that are employed by certification bodies are finally approved by us in order to be qualified.
Fantastic. Then, so then just throwing it back to BRCGS, how do we ensure that our auditors are competent? You know, aside from all the documentation or evidence that they might submit, how do we ensure that kind of ongoing competency and the competency before they even start?
So that really starts with the qualification stage before someone is approved. They go through the detailed assessment, as we just mentioned. Everything comes through to us, every single profile, and we assess and making sure that they meet the requirements. From my perspective, there's a big part in the role in reviewing these applications and making sure that evidence clearly demonstrates that someone is competent. And that's not always straightforward. Unfortunately, there are people from very different backgrounds, and no two applications are the same. It does require a consistent and evidence-based approach to make fair decisions. But it doesn't stop there once someone is approved. Competencies are continuously monitored through ongoing training, audit reviews, integrity activities, and ongoing assessments. So there's a lot in the background happening for ongoing monitoring, and all this helps maintain that auditors maintain consistent and objective and continue to meet the expected standards over the time.
Fantastic, and that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to ensure that these standards are upheld, and each audit is undertaken with due care and attention and integrity at all times, right? So that's part of your role. That's part of everybody in your team's role. So Emmanouela, thank you very much for your time today and for explaining this topic to us. Hopefully it's given somebody who might be interested in becoming an auditor in the future, it's maybe given them that little bit of confidence to go ahead and get started, because we are always looking for auditors to audit against our standards. So thank you very much for your time today. If you have a topic that you would like to see discussed on a future episode of BRCGS Bitesize, please email us at brcgs.enquiries@lgcgroup.com. All it leaves for me today is to thank you, Emmanouela, for your time today, and we will see you on the next episode of Bitesize. Thank you.
Thank you.